The Vascular Vanguard, 10 dietary weapons against the silent killer. In the microscopic battlegrounds of the human circulatory system, a silent war wages daily. Arterial plaque and hypertension act as invisible assassins, striking without warning to catastrophic effect. Yet extensive medical research has uncovered a potent arsenal not in pharmacies but in nature itself. By harnessing specific biochemical compounds, we can fortify the brain's delicate vascular network against devastation. This is not merely nutrition, it is biological armor designed to preserve cognitive longevity. Prepare to revolutionize your vascular defense, beginning with the ocean's most potent neuroprotector.
The Oceanic Shield, Salmon, and the Omega-3 Revolution. To understand the profound impact of salmon on the human cerebrovascular system, one must first descend into the microscopic violence of an ischemic stroke. It begins silently, often years before the catastrophic event. In the deep channels of the carotid arteries or the delicate branching vessels of the circle of Willis within the brain, the endothelium, the inner lining of the blood vessel, sustains damage. This damage, caused by chronic hypertension, smoking, or high glucose levels, triggers an immune response. Cholesterol, calcium, and cellular debris accumulate, forming an atherosclerotic plaque. This plaque is a ticking time bomb. When it ruptures, the body attempts to heal the breach by forming a clot, a thrombus. If this clot obstructs the flow of oxygen-rich blood to the brain, neurons begin to die within minutes. This is the biological tragedy of a stroke. However, nature has provided a countermeasure, evolved over millions of years in the icy currents of the northern hemisphere, the salmon. The consumption of salmon is not merely a dietary choice, it is the ingestion of a complex biochemical defense system. The primary weapon in this arsenal is a specific class of polyunsaturated fats known as omega-3 fatty acids, specifically eicosapentaenoic acid, EPA, and docosahexaenoic acid, DHA. These are not fuels in the traditional sense, they are bioactive signaling molecules that fundamentally alter the architecture of our blood and the behavior of our cells. Unlike the saturated fats found in terrestrial livestock, which can rigidify cell membranes and promote inflammation, the long-chain fatty acids found in salmon impart a crucial fluidity to cell membranes. This fluidity is essential for the proper functioning of endothelial cells, allowing them to expand and contract with the rhythmic pulse of the heart, thereby reducing the shear stress of blood flow that often leads to the initial arterial injury. The investigative journey into the efficacy of salmon begins with the famed Inuit paradox of the 1970s. Danish researchers Hans Olaf Bang and Jorn Dyerberg ventured to Greenland to study the Inuit population. They observed a dietary anomaly. Despite a massive intake of animal fat and protein and a nearly complete absence of fruits and vegetables, the Inuit had an astonishingly low incidence of myocardial infarction and stroke. The prevailing nutritional dogma of the time,
which demonized all fats, could not explain this. The answer lay in the source of the fat. The Inuit diet was derived almost exclusively from marine life, seals, whales, and fish, rich in omega-3s. This seminal research shifted the global medical paradigm, identifying that the type of fat matters more than the quantity. Salmon, particularly cold water varieties like sockeye and chinook, represents the apex of this nutrient density. The antithrombotic, anti-clotting properties of salmon are perhaps its most critical asset in stroke prevention. Platelets are the blood cells responsible for clotting. While essential for stopping bleeding from a wound, hyperreactive platelets are the architects of stroke. EPA and DHA incorporate themselves into the phospholipid bilayer of platelet membranes, effectively lowering the production of thromboxane A2, a potent substance that causes platelets to stick together and blood vessels to constrict. By reducing thromboxane levels, salmon acts as a mild, natural blood thinner, preventing the formation of the rogue clots that cause ischemic strokes. This is a delicate biological nuance. Unlike pharmaceutical anticoagulants, which can carry significant risks of hemorrhage, dietary omega-3s modulate the clotting mechanism to a homeostatic balance, reducing risk without compromising the body's ability to heal from trauma. Furthermore, the anti-inflammatory power of salmon cannot be overstated. Chronic low-grade inflammation is now understood to be the root cause of atherosclerosis. When the vessel wall is irritated, the body sends inflammatory cytokines to the site, which inadvertently accelerate plaque growth. The omega-3s in salmon compete with omega-6 fatty acids, pro-inflammatory fats abundant in processed vegetable oils, for the same enzymatic pathways. When the body metabolizes EPA, it produces resolvin entotectins, specialized pro-resolving mediators that actively terminate the inflammatory response. Eating salmon is essentially deploying a chemical fire squad to the arterial walls, extinguishing the smoldering inflammation that precedes plaque rupture. However, the salmon entry in this dossier requires a critical examination of sourcing, a topic rife with industrial controversy. Not all salmon is created equal, and the distinction between wild-caught and farmed aquaculture salmon is the subject of intense debate among biochemists and environmentalists. Wild salmon, forcing their way upstream against violent currents, develop lean, dense muscle mass, and feed on a natural diet of krill and zooplankton. This diet gives them their characteristic red hue, caused by the antioxidant astaxanthin, and a favorable ratio of omega-3s. Conversely, farmed salmon are often raised in high-density pens and fed a diet of soy and corn, which can skew their lipid profile. While farmed salmon still contains omega-3s, it also contains higher levels of omega-6s and, alarmingly, potential contaminants like polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs, and dioxins, which are fat-soluble pollutants. The investigative researcher must weigh these risks. While the contaminant levels in farmed salmon have decreased significantly due to stricter regulations, wild Alaskan salmon remains the gold standard for vascular protection. The astaxanthin found in wild salmon is a marvel in itself. A carotenoid pigment, it is one of the few antioxidants capable of crossing the blood-brain barrier. This means that in addition to protecting the arteries leading to the brain, the nutrients in salmon protect the brain tissue itself from oxidative stress. In the event of a transient ischemic attack, a mini-stroke, the presence of high levels of DHA and astaxanthin in the brain tissue can limit the extent of the damage, acting as a neuroprotective shield that preserves cognitive function and motor skills. We must also consider the role of salmon in regulating triglycerides. High levels of triglycerides, a type of fat in the blood, are inextricably linked to the hardening of arteries. Clinical trials have consistently demonstrated that regular consumption of fatty fish can lower triglyceride levels by 15 to 30%. The mechanism involves the liver. Omega-3s inhibit the synthesis of very low-density lipoproteins, VLDL, the precursors to LDL cholesterol, and accelerate the breakdown of triglycerides by the enzyme lipoprotein lipase. This dual action effect clears the bloodstream of the sludge that slows circulation and predisposes the system to stasis and clotting. From a culinary avicinal perspective, the preparation of this superfood is as vital as its sourcing. Deep frying salmon destroys the delicate double bonds of the omega-3 fatty acids, oxidizing them and rendering them useless or even harmful. The investigative data suggests that gentle cooking methods, poaching, steaming, or low-temperature baking, preserve the structural integrity of the lipids.
The Japanese tradition of sashimi presents the nutrients in their raw, unaltered state, though this comes with its own parasitic risks. The modern consensus favors gentle heat, perhaps paired with the next item on our list, to maximize bioavailability. Ultimately, salmon represents a critical intervention point in the timeline of vascular health. It addresses the deadly quartet of metabolic syndrome: high triglycerides, high blood pressure, inflammation, and insulin resistance. By integrating this marine predator into the human diet, we are essentially borrowing its evolutionary adaptations to cold, oxygen-rich environments to keep our own blood flowing freely. It is a testament to the interconnectedness of the biosphere that the migration of a fish in the Pacific Northwest holds the key to preventing a vascular catastrophe in the human brain.
2. The terrestrial detoxifier, dark leafy greens and the nitric oxide pathway. Leaving the cold depths of the ocean, we turn our investigative lens to the soil, specifically to the chlorophyll-rich foliage of the plant kingdom. Dark leafy greens, spinach, kale, Swiss chard, collard greens, and arugula are often dismissed as mere roughage or salad filler. This reductionist view ignores the biochemical reality. These plants are sophisticated pharmacological factories. In the context of stroke prevention, they operate through mechanisms entirely distinct from, yet perfectly complementary to the lipids found in salmon. While salmon modifies the blood's composition, leafy greens fundamentally alter the behavior of the blood vessels themselves through the miracle of the nitric oxide pathway. To comprehend the power of greens, we must revisit the 1998 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine, awarded to Furchtgott, Ignarro, and Murad for their discovery of nitric oxide, NO, as a signaling molecule in the cardiovascular system. Nitric oxide is a gas that acts as a potent vasodilator. When released by the endothelium, it signals the smooth muscle cells surrounding the arteries to relax. This relaxation widens the vessel lumen, dropping blood pressure and allowing blood to flow with less resistance. It is the body's natural pressure release valve. The connection to leafy greens is direct and profound. These vegetables are the primary dietary source of inorganic nitrates. The journey of a spinach leaf from the plate to the artery is a fascinating biological relay. When we chew leafy greens, the nitrates are mixed with saliva. Commensal bacteria living in the deep crypts of our tongue reduce these nitrates into nitrites. Once swallowed, the acidic environment of the stomach further converts these nitrites into nitric oxide, or they are absorbed into the bloodstream to be converted by enzymes in the vessel walls. This enterosalivary circulation creates a sustained reservoir of nitric oxide, providing a lasting reduction in blood pressure. Hypertension is the single greatest risk factor for stroke, responsible for over 50% of ischemic strokes and an even higher percentage of hemorrhagic strokes. By acting as a natural antihypertensive agent, leafy greens directly mitigate the mechanical stress that ruptures cerebral arteries. But the efficacy of dark leafy greens extends far beyond blood pressure. We must analyze the critical role of folate, vitamin B9.
A nutrient named after the Latin word for leaf, folium. Folate is the linchpin in the methylation cycle, a biochemical process that regulates gene expression and detoxification. Its most vital task regarding stroke risk is the breakdown of homocysteine. Homocysteine is an amino acid produced during protein metabolism. In healthy individuals, it is quickly recycled. However, in the absence of adequate folate, homocysteine levels spike. High homocysteine is toxic to the endothelium. It acts like sandpaper on the inner lining of the blood vessels, creating the lesions where plaque begins to form. It also promotes clotting. The correlation is stark. Elevated homocysteine is an independent and potent predictor of stroke. Dark leafy greens, providing abundant natural folate, superior to the synthetic folic acid found in supplements, act as the cleanup crew, keeping homocysteine levels in check and preserving the smoothness of the vascular interior. We must also conduct a deep dive into vitamin K, specifically the distinction between K1, phylloquinone found in greens, and K2, menaquinone. While K1 is primarily known for its role in blood clotting, ensuring we don't bleed to death from a paper cut, recent research has illuminated its role in preventing vascular calcification. Arterial stiffness, the hardening of the arteries that naturally occurs with age, is accelerated when calcium is deposited in the vessel walls instead of the bones. Vitamin K activates a protein called matrix Gla protein, MGP, which acts as a potent inhibitor of soft tissue calcification. It effectively tells the calcium, do not stop here, move to the skeletal system. By consuming high amounts of vitamin K-rich greens, like collards and kale, we maintain the elasticity of the carotid arteries and the aorta. This elasticity is crucial for dampening the pulsatile force of the heart before it reaches the fragile microvasculature of the brain. A stiff artery transmits high pressure directly to the brain, increasing stroke risk. A flexible artery absorbs it. The investigative scope must also widen to the phytochemical diversity within this category. Not all greens are identical. Kale and collard greens, members of the Brassica family, contain glucosinolates. When chopped or chewed, an enzyme called myrosinase converts glucosinolate into isothiocyanates, such as sulforaphane. Sulforaphane is a powerhouse compound that activates the NRF2 pathway,
the master regulator of antioxidant responses. This upregulation helps the endothelial cells withstand oxidative stress caused by pollution, smoking, or poor diet. Spinach, on the other hand, is rich in lutein and zeaxanthin, carotenoids that maintain the health of the eyes and the brain's vascular system. Swiss chard provides syringic acid, which has been shown in animal studies to stabilize blood sugar levels, a critical factor as diabetes doubles the risk of stroke. There is, however, a controversial anti-nutrient aspect to leafy greens that requires objective analysis: oxalates. Spinach and chard are high in oxalic acid, which can bind to minerals like calcium and iron, potentially reducing their absorption and contributing to kidney stones in susceptible individuals. This has led some fringe dietary movements to shun greens. However, the epidemiological data is overwhelming. Populations with the highest intake of leafy greens consistently show the lowest rates of stroke and cognitive decline. The blue zones, regions like Ikaria, Greece, and Okinawa, Japan, where people live longest, rely heavily on locally foraging greens. The investigative conclusion is that for the vast majority of the population, the vascular benefits of the nitrates, folate, and magnesium in greens vastly outweigh the minimal risks of oxalates, which can be mitigated by cooking the greens and staying hydrated. The preparation of these vegetables is also a matter of chemistry. Vitamin K and the parotenoids in greens are fat-soluble. This means that eating a bowl of steamed kale without fat results in poor absorption of these critical nutrients. The investigative recommendation, backed by centuries of Mediterranean culinary wisdom, is to pair these greens with a healthy fat. Sautéing spinach in olive oil is not just for flavor, it is a bioavailability hack that creates a nutrient delivery system. Furthermore, the duration of cooking matters. Boiling greens for extended periods leaches the water-soluble B vitamins, folate, and vitamin C into the water. Steaming or rapid sautéing preserves the vitamin content while breaking down the tough cellular walls to make the nutrients accessible. We must also acknowledge the role of magnesium, abundant in dark greens. Magnesium is the relaxation mineral. Just as it helps relax skeletal muscles after exercise, it helps relax the smooth muscles of the arteries, complementing the action of nitric oxide.
Magnesium deficiency is rampant in the modern Western diet due to soil depletion and processed food consumption. This deficiency contributes to vascular spasms and hypertension. A single cup of cooked spinach provides a significant portion of the daily requirement, acting as a natural calcium channel blocker. In the grand scope of stroke prevention, dark leafy greens represent the daily maintenance required for a high-performance machine. If salmon is the heavy artillery clearing the clots, greens are the engineers reinforcing the walls and widening the tunnels. They provide the raw materials, nitrates, folate, magnesium, vitamin K, that the body uses to self-regulate blood pressure and repair endothelial wear and tear. The shift from a diet of processed starches to one dominated by these chlorophyll-rich plants is effectively a shift from a pro-stroke environment to a pro-vascular environment. As we move down this list, we will see how these foundational elements interact with other specific foods, but let it be known, without the daily influx of nitrates and folate from greens, the vascular system is fighting a losing battle against the hardening effects of time.
3. The neurovascular guardian, blueberries and the anthocyanin shield. In the vast verdant spectrum of the plant kingdom, the color blue is a rarity.
It is an evolutionary signal, a chromatic flag waving in the underbrush of North American forests, indicating the presence of a potent chemical defense system. The blueberry, particularly the wild low-bush variety, Vaccinium angustifolium, is not merely a fruit, it is a concentrated vessel of anthocyanins, the flavonoid pigments responsible for its deep indigo hue. To the investigative researcher, the blueberry represents the most effective dietary countermeasure against the specific biological rust that corrodes the brain's vascular network, oxidative stress. The brain is a ravenous organ. Despite accounting for only 2% of total body weight, it consumes roughly 20% of the body's oxygen supply. This high metabolic rate comes with a steep price. The byproduct of oxygen metabolism is the generation of reactive oxygen species, or ROS, unstable molecules or free radicals that strip electrons from healthy cells, damaging DNA, proteins, and critically, the lipids that make up cell membranes. This process, akin to metal rusting or an apple turning brown, is oxidative stress. In the delicate, high-pressure environment of the cerebral arteries, oxidative stress is a primary architect of ischemic stroke. The mechanism by which blueberries intervene in this destructive cycle is a marvel of molecular docking. Anthocyanins are powerful antioxidants, but their role in stroke reduction goes far beyond simple free radical scavenging. Current research indicates that these compounds act as signaling molecules that interact with the genetic architecture of the endothelial cells lining the blood vessels. When we ingest blueberries, the anthocyanins are metabolized and enter the bloodstream, where they have been shown to upregulate the activity of endothelial nitric oxide synthase, or eNOS. As we explored with leafy greens, nitric oxide is the gas that relaxes blood vessels. However, nitric oxide is incredibly volatile and easily destroys destroyed like superoxide. The antioxidants in blueberries act as a bodyguard for nitric oxide, preserving its lifespan and ensuring that the arteries remain dilated and flexible. This protection is vital for neurovascular coupling, the physiological process where blood flow is rapidly directed to specific areas of the brain that are currently active.
A breakdown in this coupling is a hallmark of vascular cognitive impairment and a precursor to stroke. We must distinguish with rigorous scrutiny the difference between the cultivated high-bush blueberries found in plastic clamshells at the supermarket and their wild low-bush cousins. This distinction is not merely culinary, it is a matter of biochemical potency rooted in the concept of xenohormesis. Xenohormesis is the biological principle that animals benefit from consuming plants that have evolved under stress. Wild blueberries grow in harsh northern climates with acidic soils, battling freezing temperatures, droughts, and pests. To survive, they produce massive quantities of polyphenols and anthocyanins as a stress response. When we consume these berries, we inherit that cellular resilience. Analysis shows that wild blueberries contain significantly higher concentrations of antioxidants per serving compared to the plump, water-filled cultivated varieties that have been bred for size and sweetness rather than phytochemical density. The investigative consumer must realize that the smaller, darker, more astringent berry carries the heavier medicinal payload. The investigation leads us to the blood-brain barrier, BBB, the fortress that separates the circulating blood from the brain's extracellular fluid. The BBB is notoriously impermeable, designed to keep toxins and pathogens out of the central nervous system. This selectivity, however, often blocks potential therapeutic agents. Anthocyanins are among the select few dietary compounds capable of crossing the BBB. Once inside the brain, they accumulate in regions associated with memory and motor function, such as the hippocampus. In the context of stroke, this is revolutionary. Animal models have demonstrated that in the event of an induced stroke, subjects with high levels of circulating anthocyanins suffer significantly less brain tissue loss. The compounds appear to precondition the neurons, making them more resilient to the hypoxia, oxygen deprivation, that occurs during an ischemic event. They effectively expand the therapeutic window, the critical time after a stroke where the brain can be saved. Epidemiological evidence supports these mechanistic findings with compelling weight. The Nurses' Health Study, one of the largest and longest-running investigations into women's health, provided a massive dataset analyzing the diets of over 93,000 women.
The results were statistically striking. Those with the highest intake of anthocyanins, primarily from blueberries and strawberries, had a 32% lower risk of myocardial infarction and a significantly reduced risk of stroke compared to those with the lowest intake. This reduction persisted even after adjusting for age, BMI, exercise, and other dietary factors. The data suggests that the regular consumption of these berries acts as a chronic low-level therapeutic intervention, maintaining vascular compliance, the ability of the arteries to stretch in response to pressure, decades into the aging process. Furthermore, we must explore the impact of blueberries on the LDL cholesterol particle itself. It is not just the amount of cholesterol that matters, but the state of that cholesterol. Oxidized LDL is the true villain of atherosclerosis. It is what the immune system attacks to form plaque. Blueberries have been shown to inhibit the oxidation of LDL cholesterol. By preventing the cholesterol from becoming rancid, the fruit prevents the initial inflammatory cascade that leads to arterial hardening. This is a preventative strike at the very foundation of vascular disease. The cultural and commercial trajectory of the blueberry is also worth noting. Once a regional staple of indigenous peoples in North America who used it for everything from food to dye to medicine, it has now become a global commodity. However, with globalization comes the risk of dilution. The market is flooded with blueberry-flavored products, muffins, bars, juices that contain little to no actual fruit, or worse, are loaded with sugar, which negates the anti-inflammatory benefits. The halo effect of the superfood label is often exploited by industrial food manufacturers. The investigative truth is that the benefits are inextricably linked to the whole fruit, including the skin where the pigments reside. Juicing often removes the fiber, which modulates sugar absorption. The most effective delivery system is the frozen wild blueberry, harvested at peak ripeness and flash frozen, locking in the anthocyanins that degrade rapidly at room temperature. Looking toward the future, the blueberry is becoming a template for pharmaceutical research. Scientists are attempting to synthesize anthocyanin-based drugs that can mimic the vascular protection of the fruit with higher potency. However, nature's matrix is complex. The synergy between the anthocyanins, the fiber, the vitamin C,
and the trace minerals like manganese found in the berry likely produces an effect greater than the sum of its parts. As we face an aging population and a rising tide of metabolic syndrome, the humble blueberry offers a sophisticated, elegant solution. It is a dual-use agent. It scours the blood of damaging radicals while simultaneously flipping the genetic switches that keep our arteries youthful. It is, in essence, edible vascular insurance.
4. The electrolyte engine, bananas and the sodium-potassium equilibrium. Transitioning from the complex phytochemistry of the blueberry, we arrive at a nutritional entity that operates on the fundamental principles of physics and electricity, the banana. While often trivialized as a convenient snack or a source of sugar, the banana is the primary vehicle for delivering potassium, an electrolyte that governs the hydraulic pressure of the human body. To understand why bananas are critical for stroke prevention, one must understand the sodium-potassium pump, Na plus K plus ATPase, a protein structure found in the membrane of every cell in the body. This pump is the battery of life. It constantly works to pump sodium out of cells and pull potassium in, maintaining an electrical gradient. This gradient powers nerve impulses, muscle contractions, and, most importantly for our investigation, regulates fluid balance and blood pressure. The modern human condition is defined by a catastrophic electrolyte imbalance. For millions of years, our Paleolithic ancestors consumed a diet high in potassium, from roots, fruits, and tubers, and incredibly low in sodium. Their bodies evolved to aggressively conserve sodium and freely excrete potassium. Today, the script has been flipped. The modern industrial diet is saturated with sodium, from processed foods, preservatives, and restaurant meals, and deficient in potassium. This evolutionary mismatch is the primary driver of essential hypertension, the silent killer that acts as the leading cause of stroke. When sodium intake is high and potassium intake is low, the body retains water to dilute the sodium. This increases blood volume, forcing the heart to pump harder and exerting immense pressure on the delicate arterial walls. Over time, this pressure causes micro tears in the cerebral vessels, leading to plaque formation, ischemic stroke risk, or vessel rupture, hemorrhagic stroke risk. The banana enters this equation as a powerful corrective agent. A medium-sized banana contains approximately 400 to 450 milligrams of potassium. When ingested, this potassium acts as a diuretic. It signals the kidneys to excrete excess sodium through urine. It is a biological antagonist to salt. By flushing out sodium, potassium reduces blood volume and relaxes the tension in the blood vessel walls.
The mechanism is profound. Studies indicate that increasing potassium intake can lower systolic blood pressure by a magnitude comparable to single-agent pharmaceutical therapy. A meta-analysis published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology found that a 1,600 milligram per day increase in potassium intake was associated with a 21% lower risk of stroke. In the high-stakes game of vascular health, a 21% risk reduction is a massive statistical advantage. However, the banana entry requires a deep investigative look into the fruit itself, for the banana we eat today is a botanical clone living on borrowed time. Almost all bananas sold in the Western world belong to a single subgroup, the Cavendish. This monoculture is a result of the devastation of the Gros Michel variety in the mid-20th century by Panama disease, Fusarium wilt. The Cavendish was resistant to that strain, but it is now falling victim to a new strain, Tropical Race 4, TR4. This agricultural fragility mirrors the fragility of the human vascular system under the weight of the modern diet. The reliance on a single genetic cultivar means that the global supply of this crucial stroke-fighting nutrient is at risk. While there are thousands of banana varieties, red, blue, plantains, cooking bananas, the global supply chain is fixated on the Cavendish for its durability and shipping. This limitation restricts the nutritional diversity available to the consumer, as other varieties often contain different phytochemical profiles and higher resistant starch content. Speaking of starch, the ripeness of the banana fundamentally alters its metabolic impact, a nuance often overlooked in general health advice. Green, unripe bananas are rich in resistant starch, a type of fiber that resists digestion in the small intestine and travels to the colon. There, it feeds beneficial gut bacteria, specifically bifidobacteria, which ferment the starch into short-chain fatty acids, like butyrate. Butyrate has systemic anti-inflammatory effects and improves insulin sensitivity. Since insulin resistance acts as a thickener of the blood and a hardener of the arteries, consuming green bananas offers a secondary pathway to stroke prevention via metabolic control. As the banana ripens and turns yellow with brown spots, the starch converts to simple sugars, glucose, fructose, and sucrose. While this provides quick energy and maximizes the potassium availability, it also spikes blood sugar more rapidly.
For the diabetic patient who is at double the risk for stroke, the green-tipped banana is the superior medicinal choice. We must also address the stroke belt, a region in the southeastern United States with unusually high rates of stroke mortality. Epidemiological investigations have correlated this phenomenon not just with high-fried food consumption, but with critically low potassium intake. This geographic disparity highlights the socioeconomic aspect of stroke risk. Fresh produce is often more expensive and less available in food deserts than high-sodium processed foods. The banana, however, remains an anomaly. It is one of the cheapest produce items in the world, thanks to the economies of scale of the massive monoculture plantations. This makes the banana a crucial bridge food, an accessible, affordable intervention for at-risk populations who may not be able to afford wild Alaskan salmon or organic blueberries. It is the democratization of vascular health. Beyond potassium, bananas are a significant source of vitamin B6, pyridoxine. Vitamin B6 is essential for the metabolism of homocysteine. As discussed in the entry on leafy greens, high homocysteine levels damage the arterial lining. By providing B6, bananas help catalyze the enzymatic breakdown of homocysteine into cysteine or methionine, removing this abrasive compound from the bloodstream. Furthermore, bananas contain sterols, compounds that structurally resemble cholesterol, and can block the absorption of dietary cholesterol in the gut, providing a minor but additive benefit to lipid profiles. The philosophical implication of the banana in the modern diet is one of balance. It represents the yang to the yin of sodium. The average American consumes 3,400 milligrams of sodium per day, far above the recommended 1,500 to 2,300 milligrams, and only 2,600 milligrams of potassium, far below the recommended 4,700 milligrams. This inversion is a recipe for vascular disaster. The banana is not a magic bullet, but it is the most efficient tool for restoring the primal ratio. It is a biological buffer. However, a note of caution is required for a specific subset of the population. For individuals with advanced chronic kidney disease, CKD, the kidneys lose the ability to filter potassium efficiently. In these cases, high potassium intake can lead to hyperkalemia, a dangerous condition that can cause cardiac arrest.
This paradox underscores the complexity of biological systems. What saves the heart and brain of the hypertensive patient can stop the heart of the renal patient. But for the vast majority of the population with functioning kidneys, the advice is clear: the more potassium, the better. In conclusion, the banana is a powerhouse of hemodynamic regulation. It works by manipulating the very physics of fluid dynamics within our arteries. It counters the stiffening effects of salt, relaxes the vessel walls, and facilitates the electrical signaling that keeps the heart beating in rhythm. As we look to the future, the survival of the banana against fungal pathogens is not just an agricultural concern, it is a public health imperative. Preserving the genetic diversity of Musa species is essential to ensuring that this affordable, potassium-rich fruit remains a stable weapon in the global fight against stroke.
5. The fibrous sponge, oatmeal in the beta-glucan intervention. In the pantheon of superfoods, Avena sativa, the humble oat, is frequently underestimated, often relegated to the status of a bland utilitarian breakfast gruel. This perception acts as a camouflage for one of the most sophisticated pharmacological agents found in the agricultural world. To the investigative researcher, oatmeal is not merely a cereal. It is a biochemical sponge designed by nature to scour the human circulatory system of its most persistent enemy, low-density lipoprotein LDL cholesterol. The relationship between high LDL cholesterol and stroke is linear and undeniable. LDL particles penetrate the arterial wall, oxidize, and trigger the formation of atherosclerotic plaque. This plaque narrows the arteries, creating a turbulent, high-pressure environment that predisposes the vessel to rupture or occlusion. Oatmeal intervenes in this pathological cascade through a unique soluble fiber known as beta-glucan. The mechanism of beta-glucan is a masterclass in physical chemistry. Unlike insoluble fiber, which passes through the digestive tract largely unchanged, acting as a broom for the colon, beta-glucan dissolves in water to form a highly viscous, gel-like substance. When a human consumes a bowl of oatmeal, this gel moves slowly through the small intestine. Its primary target is not the food itself, but bile acids. Bile acids are digestive fluids produced by the liver using cholesterol as a raw material. They are secreted into the intestine to help digest fats. In a system without soluble fiber, the body efficiently
efficiently reabsorbs these bile acids and recycles them, preserving its cholesterol stores. However, the beta-glucan gel traps these bile acids within its viscous matrix, preventing their reabsorption and forcing their excretion through the stool. This excretion triggers a critical metabolic feedback loop. Sensing a drop in bile acid levels, the liver must synthesize more. To do so, it requires cholesterol. The liver upregulates its LDL receptors, effectively pulling LDL cholesterol out of the bloodstream to use as feedstock for new bile. This process, known as the bile acid sequestration hypothesis, essentially forces the body to consume its own circulating cholesterol to maintain digestive function.
Clinical meta-analyses have consistently shown that the consumption of 3 grams of beta-glucan per day, the amount found in a large bowl of oats, can lower LDL cholesterol by 5% to 10%. In the realm of vascular health, where every percentage point drop in LDL correlates to a significant reduction in cardiovascular event risk, this is a massive therapeutic yield from a simple grain. However, the stroke-reducing power of oats extends beyond cholesterol manipulation. We must investigate the presence of a unique class of antioxidants found almost exclusively in oats, avenanthramides. These phenolic compounds were historically recognized for their anti-itch properties in dermatology, hence the use of colloidal oatmeal baths. But their internal application is far more profound. Avenanthramides function as potent anti-inflammatory agents within the arterial wall. They inhibit the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines and adhesion molecules that cause immune cells to stick to the arterial lining. This stickiness is the first step in plaque formation. Furthermore, research indicates that avenanthramides stimulate the production of nitric oxide in the endothelium. As established in previous entries, nitric oxide is the vasodilator that keeps arteries open and flexible. Thus, oatmeal provides a dual-action defense. It physically removes the cholesterol substrate of plaque while chemically soothing the inflammation that allows plaque to take root. The investigation into oatmeal requires a critical distinction between the various forms of the grain available to the modern consumer. The processing of the oat groat fundamentally alters its metabolic impact. Steel-cut oats, which are simply the whole groat chopped into pieces, possess a low glycemic index. They are digested slowly, providing a sustained release of glucose into the bloodstream. This is crucial because rapid spikes in blood sugar and insulin damage the endothelial lining, making it more susceptible to atherosclerosis. Rolled oats, which are steamed and flattened, are digested slightly faster but retain much of their integrity. The danger lies in instant oatmeal. These oats have been pre-cooked, dried, and pressed so thin that they digest with the speed of simple sugar. Often laden with added sugars and artificial flavorings, instant oatmeal packets can spike insulin levels, potentially negating the benefits of the fiber. The investigative conclusion is clear. The closer the oat is to its original,
intact state, the greater its protective value against stroke. We must also explore the historical and cultural trajectory of the oat to understand its place in the human diet. For centuries, the oat was the fuel of the Scottish Highlands, a region known for its harsh climate and the rugged endurance of its people. The famous lexicographer Samuel Johnson, in his 1755 dictionary, defined oats as a grain, which in England is generally given to horses, but in Scotland supports the people. His Scottish biographer, James Boswell, famously retorted, "That is why in England you have such fine horses, and in Scotland we have such fine men." This anecdote underscores a biological truth. Oats are a high-octane fuel that sustains energy without the crash associated with refined wheat. In the 19th century, the industrialization of milling and the marketing genius of the Quaker Oats Company transformed this peasant staple into the first global breakfast brand. However, the modern shift toward ultra-processed sugary cereals represents a regression in public health, contributing to the obesity and diabetes epidemics that drive stroke rates upward. Another layer of the oat's efficacy lies in the gut microbiome. The beta-glucan that escapes digestion in the small intestine arrives in the colon, where it serves as a prebiotic feast for beneficial bacteria. These bacteria ferment the fiber, producing short-chain fatty acids, SCFAs, such as butyrate. Butyrate is a signaling molecule that travels throughout the body, reducing systemic inflammation and improving the integrity of the blood-brain barrier. Emerging research into the gut-brain axis suggests that a healthy microbiome, cultivated by soluble fiber, is essential for neurological protection. By feeding the gut, oatmeal protects the brain. However, a shadow hangs over the modern oat industry, glyphosate. This herbicide, the active ingredient in Roundup, is frequently used as a desiccant, drying agent on non-organic oat crops just before harvest. Independent testing has found trace levels of glyphosate in popular oat-based products. While regulatory agencies deem these levels safe, the cumulative effect of chronic low-level exposure on the vascular system and the microbiome is a subject of intense scientific debate. For the health-conscious consumer looking to minimize toxic load, the investigation points towards certified organic oats as the only prudent choice. Finally,
we must address the contemporary rise of oat milk. This dairy alternative has exploded in popularity, marketed as a healthy option. From a stroke prevention standpoint, this is a complex issue. While oat milk contains some beta-glucan, the enzymatic processing required to turn starch into sweet liquid often creates a product with a high glycemic load, sometimes comparable to soda. Furthermore, many commercial varieties are emulsified with inflammatory seed oils like rapeseed or sunflower oil to create a creamy texture. While oat milk may be an environmentally friendly choice, it is nutritionally inferior to the whole grain. The matrix effect, the physical structure of the solid food, is essential for the slow digestion and bile topping mechanism. To truly harness the stroke-reducing power of Aveeno Sativa, one must eat the bowl, not just drink the latte. In summary, oatmeal acts as the vascular system's janitorial service. It performs the dirty, unglamorous work of binding bile, scrubbing the arteries of cholesterol, and regulating the glucose fuel supply. It is a foundational food, a daily reset button that counters the hyperlipidemic effects of the modern lifestyle.
6. The cerebral nut, walnuts, and the polyunsaturated paradox. If the doctrine of signatures, the ancient belief that herbs resemble the body parts they treat, holds any validity, the walnut is its strongest evidence. Encased in a hard skull-like shell, the meat of the walnut is a bilobed convoluted structure that bears a striking resemblance to the human brain. While modern science dismisses the mystical aspects of this doctrine, it has confirmed the conclusion: walnuts are unequivocally the premier nut for cerebrovascular health. The walnut, Juglans regia, stands apart from its peers, almonds, cashews, hazelnuts, due to its unique fatty acid profile. It is the only tree nut that contains a significant amount of alpha-linolenic acid, ALA, the plant-based precursor to the omega-3 fatty acids found in fish. To understand the walnut's role in stroke prevention, we must look at the endothelium, the single layer of cells lining the entire circulatory system. The endothelium is not merely a passive barrier, it is a dynamic organ that regulates vascular tone. When the endothelium is healthy, it releases nitric oxide to dilate arteries and accommodate blood flow. When it is dysfunctional, arteries stiffen and plaque accumulates. This dysfunction is the earliest detectable stage of vascular disease. A landmark study published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology demonstrated the immediate power of the walnut. Researchers fed participants a high-fat meal, a salami and cheese sandwich, which typically causes the arteries to stiffen and constrict for several hours, a state known as postprandial endothelial dysfunction. However, when participants ate walnuts with the meal, this stiffening was completely prevented. The arteries remained flexible and dilated. The walnut acted as a vascular buffer, neutralizing the inflammatory impact of the saturated fat. The specific driver of this benefit is ALA. While the conversion rate of ALA into the more potent EPA and DHA found in salmon is relatively low in the human body, often less than 10%, ALA has independent neuroprotective properties. It integrates into the membranes of red blood cells, making them more deformable and less likely to aggregate into clots. For vegetarians and vegans who do not consume fish, the walnut is not optional. It is the critical lifeline for omega-3 intake. But beyond fats, walnuts are a dense source of polyphenols, specifically elagitannins.
The metabolism of elagitannins reveals the symbiotic relationship between diet and the microbiome. Elagitannins are large, complex molecules that are too big to be absorbed in the small intestine. They travel to the colon, where specific gut bacteria convert them into smaller, bioavailable compounds called urolithins, specifically urolithin A. Urolithins have recently been identified as potent inducers of mitophagy. Mitophagy is the cellular cleanup process where cells recycle old, dysfunctional mitochondria, the energy power plants of the cell. As we age, mitochondrial function in the blood vessels and brain declines, leading to energy failure and cell death. By stimulating mitophagy, walnut-derived urolithins rejuvenate the cellular energy systems of the vascular network, keeping the arteries young and resilient against the stress of hypertension. The investigative spotlight must also shine on the Predimed study, one of the most significant nutritional trials in history. Conducted in Spain with over 7,000 participants, the study compared a low-fat diet against a Mediterranean diet supplemented with either extra virgin olive oil or mixed nuts, primarily walnuts. The results were so dramatic the trial was stopped early for ethical reasons. It was deemed unfair to keep the control group on the low-fat diet. The group consuming the nut-enriched diet showed a staggering 46% reduction in the risk of stroke compared to the control group. This is a level of efficacy that rivals and in some cases exceeds pharmaceutical statins, without the side effects. The study proved that the addition of healthy fats, rather than the restriction of all fats, is the key to stroke prevention. However, the walnut entry comes with a significant caveat regarding storage and handling, a detail often missed by the average consumer. The very polyunsaturated fats that make walnuts medicinal also make them chemically fragile. Polyunsaturated fats have multiple double bonds in their carbon chain, which are highly susceptible to oxidation when exposed to heat, light, and oxygen. A rancid walnut is not just a culinary offense, it is a health hazard. Oxidized fats contain lipid peroxides, which are pro-inflammatory and can actually contribute to atherosclerosis. The investigative advice is strict. Walnuts should never be bought in bulk bins where they sit exposed to air and supermarket lighting for weeks. They should be purchased in sealed, opaque bags and once opened,
stored immediately in the refrigerator or freezer. The cold halts the oxidative process, preserving the integrity of the ALA. Furthermore, while toasted walnuts are delicious, high-heat roasting can damage the delicate oils and destroy the antioxidants. Raw, cold-stored walnuts are the therapeutic gold standard. We must also discuss the skin of the walnut, the pellicle. This paper-thin, waxy, slightly bitter covering is often removed in baking or processing to improve flavor. This is a medicinal error. Analyses show that approximately 90% of the phenols in walnuts are located in the pellicle. The bitterness is the medicine. It is the taste of the tannins and flavonoids that scavenge free radicals. Removing the skin strips the nut of its antioxidant capacity, leaving behind only the fat. The investigative consumer learns to embrace the astringency as a sensory signal of potency. Culturally, the walnut has a deep lineage. Originating in ancient Persia, modern-day Iran, it traveled along the Silk Road to China and the Mediterranean. It was known to the Romans as juglans, a contraction of Jovis glans, meaning Jupiter's nut or nut of the gods. This etymology reflects the high esteem in which it was held, reserved for royalty and elite warriors. Today, the Central Valley of California produces the majority of the world's supply, but the monoculture farming practices there raise questions about water usage and sustainability in a drought-prone region. This environmental constraint may impact future pricing and availability, making the walnut a luxury commodity once again. In the context of the future of nutrition, walnuts are a prime candidate for precision nutrition. Geneticists are currently working to identify specific cultivars with higher ALA content and better storage stability. But even in its current form, the walnut is a compact, nutrient-dense package that targets the multiple mechanisms of stroke, inflammation, oxidation, and endothelial dysfunction. It is a brain-shaped key that unlocks vascular longevity. The synergy between the previous entry, oatmeal, and the walnut is also noteworthy. A breakfast of steel-cut oats topped with raw walnuts combines the cholesterol-lowering Kauermuth beta-glucan with the endothelial-protecting power of ALA and urolithins. It is a tactical combination, a stack of nutrients that covers both the lipid and inflammatory pathways of stroke risk. As we continue down this list,
We will see how these foundational foods interact with the spices and oils that flavor them, creating a comprehensive dietary defense system.
In the annals of nutritional anthropology, few substances hold the mythic weight of Olea europaea. Homer called it liquid gold, and Hippocrates, the father of medicine, prescribed it for over 60 different ailments. However, for the modern investigative researcher, extra virgin olive oil, EVO, is not merely a culinary staple or a historical artifact. It is arguably the most potent, broad-spectrum vascular protectant available in the natural world. To understand its role in stroke prevention, we must strip away the romanticism of the Tuscan countryside and examine the cold, hard biochemistry of the olive fruit. Unlike seed oils, corn, soybean, canola, which are extracted using high heat and industrial solvents like hexane, true EVO is essentially a fruit juice. It is the oily plasma of the olive, pressed mechanically without chemicals. This preservation of the matrix is critical because it retains the minor components that define its medical efficacy, the polyphenols. While the backbone of olive oil is oleic acid, a monounsaturated fatty acid that resists oxidation and improves the flexibility of arterial walls, the true stroke-fighting power lies in the fraction that makes up less than 2% of the oil's weight. These are the phenolic compounds, specifically oleocanthal, oleorupin, and hydroxytyrosol. The discovery of oleocanthal is a story of sensory science meeting pharmacology. Researchers noticed that high-quality, fresh EVO produces a distinctive peppery sting at the back of the throat, a sensation remarkably similar to swallowing ibuprofen in liquid form. Molecular analysis revealed that oleocanthal acts as a natural non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, NSAID. It inhibits the cyclooxygenase, COX enzymes, the same pathways targeted by ibuprofen to reduce inflammation. Since chronic inflammation of the vascular endothelium is the precursor to plaque rupture and ischemic stroke, daily consumption of EVO is akin to a microdosing strategy of anti-inflammatory therapy without the gastric side effects of synthetic drugs. The investigative lens must focus sharply on the interaction between EVO and low-density lipoprotein, LDL. As previously established, LDL is only dangerous when it oxidizes. Hydroxytyrosol, one of the most powerful antioxidants found in nature, possesses a unique molecular structure that allows it to bind to the LDL particle. It acts as a sacrificial shield.
When free radicals attack, they hit the hydroxytyrosol instead of the cholesterol. This prevents the LDL from becoming sticky and embedding itself in the arterial wall. The European Food Safety Authority, EFSA, known for its rigorous standards, has formally authorized the health claim that olive oil polyphenols contribute to the protection of blood lipids from oxidative stress. This is not folk medicine. This is authorized regulatory science. However, the extra virgin olive oil entry requires a deep, exposed-style investigation into the global supply chain, which is rife with fraud. The term extra virgin is a legal standard, denoting an oil with free acidity below 0.8% and zero sensory defects. Yet investigations by bodies like the UC Davis Olive Center have historically revealed that a staggering percentage of imported oils sold in American supermarkets fail to meet these standards. They are often lampante oil, lamp oil, that has been chemically deodorized and cut with cheap hazelnut or sunflower oil, then colored with chlorophyll to fake the appearance of freshness.
This is the agro-mafia at work. For the stroke patient, this fraud is not just a consumer ripoff, it is a medical hazard. Adulterated oils lack the critical polyphenols, oleocanthal, and may contain pro-inflammatory oxidized fats. The investigative consumer must learn to read the label like a dossier, looking for a specific harvest date, not just a best-by date, a specific estate or mill name, and a dark glass bottle to protect against photooxidation. The cough test, swallowing a spoonful to check for that peppery burn, is a legitimate field test for the presence of medicinal compounds. We must also revisit the Predimed study, the gold standard of nutritional research mentioned in the Walnut entry. The arm of the study that received a liter of EVO per week showed a 30% reduction in cardiovascular events, with the strongest protection seen against stroke specifically. The data suggested that EVO is superior to a low-fat diet in every metric. It improves endothelial function, lowers blood pressure, and modulates gene expression. This brings us to the emerging field of nutrigenomics. Research indicates that the phenols in olive oil can actually silence pro-inflammatory genes and activate genes involved in cellular repair. We are not just lubricating the arteries, we are reprogramming the software of the vascular system.
A persistent myth that the investigative researcher must dispel is the idea that one cannot cook with olive oil due to a low smoke point. This is a misunderstanding of chemistry. While the smoke point of EVOO is lower than refined industrial oils, around 375 to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, it is sufficiently high for sautéing and roasting. More importantly, oxidative stability is the true metric of safety. Because EVOO is loaded with antioxidants, it resists breaking down into toxic aldehydes when heated, unlike grapeseed or sunflower oil, which may have higher smoke points but degrade rapidly into carcinogenic compounds under heat. The Mediterranean tradition of cooking vegetables in olive oil is therefore scientifically sound. The fat increases the absorption of the vitamins in the vegetables, while the phenols prevent the fat from oxidizing. The cultural dominance of olive oil in the blue zones, like Icaria, Greece, and Sardinia, Italy, offers epidemiological proof of its power. In these regions, consumption is not measured in teaspoons but in liters. It is the primary source of calories. These populations exhibit remarkably low rates of vascular dementia and stroke, retaining cognitive function deep into their 90s. The oil is often consumed raw, poured liberally over greens, beans, and bread, maximizing the intake of the heat-sensitive vitamins and aromatics. Furthermore, we must analyze the role of EVOO in blood pressure regulation. Oleic acid regulates membrane lipid structure, which influences G-protein-mediated signaling, causing a reduction in blood pressure. Additionally, the polyphenols have been shown to increase the bioavailability of nitric oxide. In hypertensive patients, the regular substitution of other fats with olive oil can allow for a reduction in the dosage of antihypertensive medication under medical supervision. It tackles the mechanical cause of stroke, high pressure, at the root. As we look to the future, the olive oil industry is bifurcating. On one side, mass-market industrial blends. On the other, a surge in high-phenolic olive oils, specifically cultivated and harvested early when the olives are green and unripe, to maximize medicinal content. These oils are bitter, pungent, and expensive, marketed almost as supplements rather than food. For the individual concerned with stroke risk, the investment in a high-quality, early-harvest EVOO is an investment in vascular insurance.
It is the only food that physically mimics the effects of ibuprofen and statins, while providing the caloric energy to sustain life. It is the foundational fluid of the stroke-resistant diet.
8. The sulfurous defense, garlic, and the allicin activation. If olive oil is the liquid foundation of the vascular defense, garlic, Allium sativum, is its volatile, pungent ammunition. Throughout history, garlic has been revered and reviled in equal measure, worshipped by the Egyptians who fed it to the pyramid builders for strength, and banned from certain temples in India and Greece for its disturbing odor. To the investigative researcher, that odor is the point. The smell of garlic is the smell of sulfur, and sulfur is the chemical key to its stroke-preventing capabilities. Garlic is not a passive vegetable. It is a chemical weapon designed by the plant to repel pests. When we consume it, we co-opt this weapon system to fight the internal pests of the human body: hypertension, thrombosis, and hyperlipidemia. The investigation into garlic begins with a crucial piece of kitchen chemistry that most consumers get wrong. The primary active compound in garlic, allicin, diallothiasulfonate, does not exist in the whole clove. The clove contains a precursor amino acid called alliin and an enzyme called alliinase. These two are kept in separate compartments within the plant cells. It is only when the garlic is crushed, chopped, or chewed that the cell walls rupture, mixing the alliin and alliinase to produce allicin. This reaction takes time. The 10-minute rule is a mandatory protocol for the medicinal use of garlic. After chopping, one must let the garlic sit for 10 minutes before cooking. If you throw minced garlic immediately into a hot pan, the heat destroys the alliinase enzyme before it can produce the allicin, neutralizing the medicinal benefit. This simple procedural error likely accounts for the variance in effectiveness seen in some observational studies. Once allicin is formed and ingested, it unleashes a cascade of vascular benefits. The most profound is its effect on blood pressure. Garlic acts as a natural ACE inhibitor, angiotensin-converting enzyme inhibitor,
mimicking the mechanism of drugs like lisinopril. It prevents the formation of angiotensin II, a hormone that constricts blood vessels. Furthermore, red blood cells metabolize the organic polysulfides in garlic and convert them into hydrogen sulfide H2S gas. H2S, like nitric oxide, is a gasotransmitter, a signaling molecule that tells the smooth muscle cells of the arteries to relax and dilate. This expansion of the vessel volume lowers systemic blood pressure.
A meta-analysis published in the Journal of Nutrition concluded that garlic supplementation could lower systolic blood pressure by an average of 10 millimeters in hypertensive individuals, a reduction significant enough to lower stroke risk by approximately 40%. The antithrombotic, anti-clotting properties of garlic are equally potent and require careful management. Garlic is a known fibrinolytic agent. It helps break down fibrin, the mesh that holds blood clots together. It also inhibits platelet aggregation, preventing the blood cells from clumping in the first place. This makes garlic a natural blood thinner. In the context of ischemic stroke prevention, this is life-saving. However, the investigative researcher must note the contraindications. For patients already on high-dose anticoagulants like warfarin, excessive garlic consumption can increase the risk of bleeding. This highlights the potency of the food. It is strong enough to interact with pharmaceuticals. Garlic's assault on cholesterol is another prong of its defense. Research suggests that garlic inhibits HMG-CoA reductase, the same liver enzyme targeted by statin drugs. While the effect is more modest than statins, typically a 10–15% reduction in total cholesterol, it comes with the added benefit of reducing the oxidation of lipids. Aged garlic extract, AGE, a specific preparation where garlic is soaked in dilute alcohol for up to 20 months, has shown remarkable results in halting the progression of coronary calcification. The aging process converts the N-stable pungent allicin into stable water-soluble compounds like S-allocysteine. These compounds are highly bioavailable and have been shown to strip soft plaque from the arteries, stabilizing the vascular endothelium and preventing the rupture that causes strokes. The historical timeline of garlic is a testament to its efficacy. During the Great Plague of London, legend tells of the Four Thieves vinegar, a concoction of garlic and herbs used by looters to protect themselves from infection. While they were protecting against bacteria, they were inadvertently boosting their immune and vascular systems. In 19th century France, garlic was fed to horses to clear clots in their legs. Today, science has validated these folk practices. The breakdown products of allicin, ajoine, and vinylditheons are being studied for their ability to prevent the intimal thickening of blood vessels after injury.
We must also explore the antimicrobial aspect of garlic as a secondary stroke prevention mechanism. Chronic infection and the resulting systemic burden of inflammation, such as from periodontal disease, are linked to an increased risk of stroke. Garlic is a broad-spectrum antibiotic, antiviral, and antifungal agent. By reducing the total pathogen load in the body, specifically in the oral cavity and gut, garlic lowers the baseline level of systemic inflammation, C-reactive protein. A body less busy fighting infection is a body less prone to inflammatory vascular damage. The cultural ubiquity of garlic, from the sofrito of Spain to the curries of India and the stir-fries of China, suggests a universal intuitive understanding of its health benefits. However, the modern Western diet often utilizes garlic powder or garlic salt, which are nutritionally inferior. The drying process degrades the delicate sulfur compounds. The investigative conclusion is that fresh is best and stinky is better. The very breath that makes garlic socially awkward is the proof of its efficacy. The sulfur compounds are absorbed into the blood, travel through the lungs, and are exhaled. If you can smell it on your breath, it means the medicine is circulating through your entire vascular system, reaching the brain. In the culinary laboratory, the combination of garlic and onion, another allium rich in quercetin, creates a synergistic effect. Quercetin is a flavonoid that further relaxes blood vessels. When garlic is sautéed in extra virgin olive oil, the lipids in the oil help with the absorption of the fat-soluble sulfur compounds. This triad, garlic, onion, olive oil, forms the base of the Mediterranean diet, effectively a daily pharmaceutical cocktail for vascular health. Looking forward, the future of garlic research lies in kyolic preparations and standardized supplements that can deliver high doses of S-allylcysteine without the social stigma of odor. However, for the purist, the raw clove remains the gold standard. Some biohackers advocate swallowing chopped garlic like a pill to bypass the taste while securing the allicin. Whatever the delivery method, the evidence is overwhelming. Garlic is a sulfur-based shield that keeps the blood flowing fluidly and the vessels wide open. It is the peasant's penicillin and the king's cardioprotectant. In summary, while olive oil provides the soothing anti-inflammatory medium, garlic provides the active,
aggressive chemical intervention. It thins the blood, dilates the tubes, and scrubs the cholesterol. Together, they form the chemical backbone of a stroke-proof diet, proving that the most effective pharmacy is often found in the produce aisle, hidden inside a papery white bulb.
9. The ancient pulse, lentils, and the glycemic architecture. In the archaeological strata of the Paleolithic era, amidst the remnants of early human settlements in the Fertile Crescent, researchers consistently find the carbonized remains of a tiny lens-shaped seed, the lentil, Lens culinaris. For over 10,000 years, this legume has served as the caloric bedrock of civilization, often derided in times of prosperity as poor man's meat. However, modern nutritional epidemiology has upended this class's distinction. The lentil is not merely a survival food, it is a metabolic regulator of the highest order, possessing a nutritional architecture perfectly designed to dismantle the physiological conditions that lead to stroke. To understand the lentil's power, one must first understand the catastrophic impact of insulin resistance on the vascular system. When we consume refined carbohydrates, white bread, sugar, processed grains, our blood glucose spikes violently. The pancreas responds by flooding the system with insulin. Over time, this chronic cycling leads to insulin resistance, a state where the cells stop listening to the hormonal signal. The resulting high levels of circulating insulin and glucose are toxic to the endothelium. They scour the inner lining of the arteries, reducing the production of nitric oxide and promoting a pro-inflammatory state that hardens the vessels. This is the diabetic and pre-diabetic pathway to ischemic stroke. Lentils act as the ultimate brake on the system. They possess one of the lowest glycemic indices of any food in the plant kingdom. This is due to their complex carbohydrate structure, which is encapsulated in a robust matrix of fiber and plant protein. Digestion is slow, methodical, and sustained. There is no spike. There is only a gentle, undulating release of energy. The investigative spotlight must illuminate a phenomenon known in clinical nutrition as the second meal effect. This is a physiological marvel where the consumption of lentils at one meal improves the body's blood sugar regulation at the next meal, even if that second meal is high in sugar. If you eat a lentil soup for lunch and a white baguette for dinner, your blood sugar spike after dinner will be significantly blunted compared to if you had skipped the lentils. The mechanism lies in the colon. The soluble fiber and resistant starch in lentils, carbohydrates that resist digestion in the small intestine, travel to the large intestine.
The gut microbiome ferments them into short-chain fatty acids, SCFAs, specifically propionate and butyrate. These SCFAs are absorbed into the bloodstream and signal the liver to decrease glucose production and increase insulin sensitivity. Furthermore, they trigger the release of glucagon-like peptide 1, GLP-1, a hormone that slows gastric emptying. In an era where pharmaceutical GLP-1 agonists like Ozempic are dominating the medical conversation, lentils offer a natural, mild, biological analog. By stabilizing blood sugar, lentils prevent the microvascular damage that weakens the cerebral arteries over decades. Beyond glycemic control, lentils are a powerhouse of folate, vitamin B9, a nutrient we touched upon with leafy greens, but which deserves a specific examination in the context of legumes. The homocysteine hypothesis of stroke posits that elevated levels of the amino acid homocysteine damage the arterial lining and promote clotting. Lentils are among the most concentrated sources of natural folate in the human diet. A single cup provides nearly 90% of the daily recommended intake. This massive influx of folate drives the remethylation cycle, efficiently converting toxic homocysteine back into benign methionine. In populations with genetic mutations, like MTHFR, that impair folate metabolism, the high bioavailability of natural food folate found in lentils is superior to synthetic folic acid. It is a direct chemical intervention against arterial toxicity. We must also analyze the protein substitution effect. Epidemiological data suggests that high consumption of red and processed meats is linked to an increased risk of stroke, driven by saturated fats, heme iron, which can be pro-oxidant, and sodium in processed varieties. Lentils provide a seamless high-protein alternative. When a population shifts its protein intake from animal sources to plant sources like lentils, stroke risk plummets. This is not just about what you are eating, it is about what you are not eating. By choosing a lentil stew over a steak, one avoids the inflammatory cascade associated with arachidonic acid found in animal fats, while simultaneously ingesting the anti-inflammatory polyphenols found in the lentil skins. The phytochemical profile of the lentil varies by color, a detail often missed by the casual consumer. Brown and green lentils are rich in flavonols, catechins, and proconcyidins, similar to those found in tea and cocoa. However, the beluga lentil, the tiny black variety that resembles caviar, is rich in anthocyanins, the same blue-purple pigment found in blueberries. These anthocyanins are potent antioxidants that scavenge superoxide radicals in the bloodstream. Investigative studies have shown that lentil polyphenols inhibit the angiotensin-converting enzyme, ACE, the same mechanism used by blood pressure medication. This natural ACE inhibitory activity relaxes the blood vessels, reducing the hydraulic pressure that can cause a hemorrhagic stroke. A controversy often cited by detractors of a legume-heavy diet is the presence of anti-nutrients like lectins and phytates. These compounds can bind to minerals like zinc and iron, potentially reducing their absorption. However, the investigative researcher must look at the data in context. Cooking lentils, boiling them until soft, destroys the vast majority of lectins. Furthermore, phytates have been rehabilitated in recent science. They are now understood to have antioxidant and anti-cancer properties. The anti-nutrient fearmongering collapses under the weight of demographic evidence. The blue zones from Icaria, Greece to Nicoya, Costa Rica are regions where centenarians thrive on a diet of beans and lentils. These populations have the lowest rates of stroke in the world. The anti-nutrients are clearly not preventing them from reaching age 100 with their cognitive faculties intact.
The environmental aspect of the lentil also bears a philosophical relation to human health. Lentils are nitrogen fixers. They cull nitrogen from the atmosphere and deposit it into the soil, rejuvenating the earth without the need for synthetic fertilizers. There is a symmetry here. Just as the lentil heals the soil by restoring its chemical balance, it heals the human vascular system by restoring its metabolic balance. It is a crop of restoration. In the culinary laboratory, the versatility of the lentil allows it to be a daily staple rather than an occasional side dish. From the dal of India, spiced with turmeric, another anti-inflammatory, to the mujadra of the Middle East, lentils are traditionally paired with grains like rice or bulgur. This pairing is significant because it creates a complete protein, providing all 9 essential amino acids required for tissue repair. For the stroke survivor recovering from neurological damage,
The availability of high-quality amino acids is crucial for neuroplasticity and the rebuilding of neural pathways. In summary, the lentil is the metabolic anchor of the stroke prevention diet. It tackles the deadly quartet of metabolic syndrome: obesity, hypertension, hyperglycemia, and dyslipidemia. It acts as a sponge for cholesterol, a regulator for insulin, and a scavenger for free radicals. It transforms the violent peaks and valleys of modern blood sugar into a calm, rolling sea, preserving the delicate endothelial lining of the brain's blood vessels for the long haul.
10. The cerebral elixir, green tea and the catechin cascade. Our investigation concludes with a substance that is technically a beverage, yet functions biologically as a liquid food, Camellia sinensis. Specifically, we examine the unoxidized leaves of this plant, known to the world as green tea. While water is the foundation of life, green tea is arguably the foundation of longevity in the East. The Asian paradox has long baffled Western cardiologists. Despite high rates of smoking and hypertension in countries like Japan, the rates of cardiovascular mortality and ischemic stroke are paradoxically low. The investigative consensus increasingly points to the omnipresent consumption of green tea as a primary protective factor. This is not merely a soothing hot drink, it is a pharmacological delivery system for a specific class of flavonoids known as catechins, the most potent of which is epigallocatechin gallate, EGGC. To understand the efficacy of green tea against stroke, one must zoom in on the endothelium. As we have established throughout this dossier, the health of this single layer of cells is the determinant of vascular destiny. Green tea has a rapid, almost immediate effect on endothelial function. Clinical trials utilizing a measurement called flow-mediated dilation, FMD, have shown that within 30 minutes of consuming a cup of green tea, the brachial artery's ability to dilate significantly improves. The catechins in the tea activate the enzyme endothelial nitric oxide synthase, ENOS, flooding the vessels with nitric oxide. This reverses the temporary endothelial dysfunction caused by a high-fat meal or stress. It is a vascular reset button. The star molecule EGGC is a marvel of antioxidant chemistry. It is estimated to be 100 times more potent than vitamin C and 25 times more potent than vitamin E at neutralizing free radicals. In the context of the brain, this is vital. The brain is highly susceptible to lipid peroxidation, the rancidity of fats. Since the brain is largely composed of fat, myelin sheaths, oxidative stress there is catastrophic. EGGC has the unique ability to cross the blood-brain barrier, BBB. Once inside the cerebral parenchyma, it acts as a neuroprotective agent. Animal models of ischemia, stroke, have shown that subjects pre-treated with EGGC suffer significantly smaller infarct volumes, areas of dead tissue, compared to controls.
The compound appears to inhibit the apoptotic cell suicide pathways that are triggered when neurons are deprived of oxygen. Essentially, it buys the brain time. We must also investigate the processing of the leaf, which differentiates green tea from black or oolong. Green tea leaves are harvested and immediately steamed in the Japanese tradition or pan-fried in the Chinese tradition. This application of heat deactivates the enzyme polyphenol oxidase, preventing the catechins from oxidizing and turning the leaf brown. Black tea, by contrast, is allowed to fully oxidize. While black tea has benefits, theaflavins, the concentration of EGCG is vastly superior in green tea. This preservation of the raw antioxidant profile is what makes green tea the superior choice for stroke reduction. A critical, often overlooked component of green tea is the amino acid L-theanine. This compound is a neurological modulator that promotes alpha wave activity in the brain, a state of relaxed alertness. Chronic psychological stress is a major risk factor for stroke. It keeps cortisol levels high, which spikes blood pressure and damages arteries. L-theanine antagonizes the stimulatory effects of caffeine, preventing the jitters and blood pressure spikes often associated with coffee. This synergy between L-theanine and caffeine creates a state of calm focus. By managing the stress response, green tea acts as a psychological shield against the hypertension that drives stroke risk. The investigative researcher must also address the matcha phenomenon. Matcha is green tea leaves that have been shaded for weeks prior to harvest.
breakfast, boosting chlorophyll and L-theanine, then stone ground into a fine powder. When one drinks matcha, one is not drinking an infusion, one is consuming the entire leaf suspended in water. This provides a massive dose of catechins, equivalent to 3 to 10 cups of steep tea. For the individual looking to maximize stroke protection, high-quality ceremonial matcha represents the pinnacle of flavonoid intake. However, caution is warranted regarding sourcing. Tea plants are bioaccumulators, meaning they suck up heavy metals like lead and fluoride from the soil. Because you eat the whole leaf with matcha, the purity of the soil is paramount. Sourcing from reputable organic estates in Japan is a safety necessity. Epidemiological studies involving hundreds of thousands of participants back the mechanistic science.
The Osaki National Health Insurance Cohort Study in Japan followed over 40,000 adults for 11 years. The data revealed that those who consumed 5 or more cups of green tea per day had a 26% lower risk of death from cardiovascular disease and a specifically reduced risk of stroke compared to those who drank less than 1 cup. The sheer volume of consumption in these cultures suggests that green tea is best viewed as a water replacement rather than an occasional treat. The protective effect is dose-dependent. The more you drink, the stronger the shield. Green tea also plays a role in preventing the clot itself. Catechins have been shown to inhibit platelet aggregation, similar to aspirin but with a milder mechanism. They prevent the platelets from becoming sticky without significantly increasing bleeding risk. This antithrombotic effect, combined with the lowering of LDL cholesterol, green tea blocks cholesterol absorption in the gut, creates a multi-pronged defense against ischemic events. Furthermore, we must look at the impact on cerebral hemorrhage, the bleeding type of stroke. This is often caused by the weakening of the arterial walls, aneurysm. Research suggests that green tea polyphenols inhibit the enzymes matrix metalloproteinases that degrade the structural proteins of the blood vessel wall. By inhibiting these enzymes, green tea helps maintain the tensile strength of the cerebral arteries, preventing them from blowing out under pressure. Culturally, the ritual of tea preparation itself offers a stroke-reducing benefit. The Japanese tea ceremony, chonoyu, is a practice of mindfulness. In a world of chronic rushing and high-stress multitasking, the act of slowing down, heating the water to the precise temperature, never boiling as 175 degrees Fahrenheit 80 degrees Celsius preserves the sweet L-theanine and prevents bitterness, and whisking the tea forces a physiological downregulation of the sympathetic nervous system. It is meditation in a cup. In conclusion, green tea is the liquid intelligence of the plant world. It does not force the body into submission. It coaxes the endothelium to relax, the platelets to flow smoothly, and the neurons to withstand stress. It is the perfect closing entry to our list because it represents a lifestyle. To drink green tea daily is to commit to a ritual of self-preservation, from the omega-3s of the deep ocean salmon to the EGCG of the high mountain tea plantation.
We have traversed a global landscape of vascular defense. These 10 foods are not magic bullets. They are the bricks and mortar of a fortress, built daily, meal by meal, against the silent tide of stroke. The science is clear, the history is deep, and the power to protect the brain lies ultimately on the plate.